All right. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Good evening.
Well, this is our first meeting of the elementary school reuse and disposition advisory group. And for the first time, just wanted to have everyone go around the room and welcome each other, and then we can talk a little bit about what it is we're trying to accomplish, what we can do, we as an administration can do to help you as the advisory group make some recommendations and make some suggestions to us for the reuse of some buildings. So why don't we go around?
My name's Chet Stencil from Precinct 4, and I am an abutter of Julia Bancroft School.
My name's Kevin Hussey. I'm on the Finance Committee.
Denise Brotherton, Board of Selectmen.
Joe Martin, I'm from Precinct 2.
Paul Kosky, Chairman of the Planning Board.
Julie Jacobson, Town Manager.
Matthew Benoit, Town Planner. Kevin Kennedy, I'm a parent of 3 kids in the schools, currently 2 at Mary D and 1 in Packagug. Resident of the town, Precinct 1. And
Hi, I'm Margaret Murphy. I live on Church Street, and I also have 3 children in the Auburn Public Schools.
Kathy Lozay, the Assistant Superintendent for the school system.
And Dorothy Sutton, member of the school committee.
So, there are a couple of members who are not here this evening. We also have Rocky Cataldo and Ralph Capaldi, as well as Kathy Jo Bimendifer. So I just want to explain a little bit about how we tried to put the committee together. So, number one, I'm not going to be on the committee, on the group, because ultimately this group would be making a recommendation to the town administration for the reuse. So I don't want to guide you in any way, shape, or form toward any specific end result. So I just want to be here to give you information as you need it. I'll come in to any of the meetings that you need me to come into, but I thought I would just be here for the first meeting and kind of explain some things. Matt Benoit is our new town planner. He's been here 2 weeks now, and it's great having him, and he is a regular member of the committee. And again, I keep calling it committee. It's actually an advisory group, and you might wonder why it's an advisory group and not a committee. Twofold. It's got a short-term life, per se. The school department will, and school committee, have the intention, anyway, of ultimately declaring 2 elementary schools as surplus property, one being the Julia Bancroft School and the other one being the Mary D. Stone School. Once that happens, we would like to have a plan in place for the reuse or disposition, meaning sale or lease, of one or both of the properties, or just reuse for public use. So we were hoping that the committee, this group, would get together and provide recommendations to us maybe by July, and we'll talk about it, but that was kind of our thought, by July. And then when the schools become vacant, which we hope will happen when the middle school goes online in the beginning of the school year in 2015, we could have started to move forward on implementing some of the recommendations of the committee. And again, I keep saying committee. The reason it's not technically a committee is because to be a committee in the town of Auburn, you have to have all Auburn residents. And we wanted to make sure that we had the appropriate employees to provide information to you and could come in and out and help you. So actually, Matt, we didn't know when we put this together, but Matt is an Auburn resident and he is our town planner. But not knowing who would fulfill that position, we knew we needed the town planner here. I'll just go through just quickly and tell you how we've established this advisory group. So what we did is we took 1 member of the Board of Selectmen, 1 member of the Finance Committee, 1 member of the Planning Board, 1 member of the School Committee, and then from the employee standpoint, we took 1 member of the School Department, which is Kathy, who's the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and
Teaching, Learning, and Curriculum.
Thank you. And Matt being the town planner. And then initially, our thought was to get 2 to 4 residents from the neighborhoods of each of the affected schools. And thankfully, we received a lot of interest and requests to be on the committee from other residents. So we thought there's certainly no harm. It's better to have more people involved. So what we tried to do is we got 3 residents from the Mary D. neighborhood, and we got 3 residents from the Julia Bancroft neighborhood, and 1 resident who's really not in either neighborhood. So we thought it would be a nice balance. So there are actually 7 residents. Again, not counting you, Matt, as both town planner, but you're here as a town planner. So that's how we put it together, and each of the boards and commissions that we asked to submit a representative to decided amongst themselves who to submit. So Dorothy is a member of the school committee. Paul Koski is actually the chair of the planning board. Denise Brotherton was selected from the Board of Selectmen, and Kevin Hussey is the chair of the finance committee. So that's how we put this group together. What we thought we'd do tonight is just quickly go over the purpose of the advisory group, what it is we're hoping you'll accomplish. Matt brought some information he's going to go over with you specific to the buildings and the properties, so you have a good understanding, and we'll get more for you. We didn't want to overwhelm you tonight, but just give you an idea of what the property is, what is it made up of, what are we looking at, and then go through the process for disposition, and maybe some timeframes and how you want to set up the meetings. So, first of all, the purpose of this, again, is to analyze the options available for each school, Mary D. Stone and Julia Bancroft. And those options can really be a wide range. You can look at public use, you can look at private use, you can look at disposition, meaning lease or sale. Everything that the town does with town property does fall under Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 30B, which is the procurement law, which dictates how any community disposes of their property, whether it be through sale or lease. So when we get into that, and if you have questions, we can certainly come in and answer any questions. If you at any point feel we need to bring in town counsel for any really specific legal questions, we're happy to do that as well. But there are disposition processes that you have to follow. Primarily, let's take for an example, if we wanted to put a building out for sale, we would put what you call together an RFP, a request for proposals. We could make it real specific to the use that we wanted. We advertise it. We take bids on it, and those bids are multifaceted, and we look for a project that fits the needs of the neighborhood or of the town or what we're trying to accomplish. Another way to dispose of property is through an auction. It's generally not the preferred method when you have a large building like that, because you really want to make sure you're not selling to the highest bidder necessarily, you're getting the best project for the town and for the neighborhood. So there are different ways that you can dispose of property. Likewise with a lease, you still have to follow, this procurement procedure. And we can walk you through that. So just a lot of different things to think about. One other aspect of this on the agenda, we wanted to also analyze the potential financial impacts to the annual budget. And just by that, we've started to do that. The school superintendent has certainly done a great job, and the school committee has done a great job. But when the two schools are ultimately closed, we have to recognize that it may be a while before we get a new use for those buildings. A lot of things can happen. Let's say we recommend and we all agree that we should be selling one of the buildings. It could take a long time to actually get that sale to go through. We could put an RFP out and not get any proposals. We could get proposals that don't meet the criteria. We could have to rebid it. We had similar problems with other buildings. We had to put it out a couple of times before we got actually a bona fide offer and we were able to sell the property. So it can take some time. So financially, we have to consider what costs go into maintaining these buildings when they're not being used. They still need to have their security systems. They still need to have their fire detection systems. They still need to potentially have heat, unless, of course, you have to drain the pipes, in which case you have to still make sure you don't have a wet sprinkler system that you're shutting down by turning down the water. So there's a cost to maintaining the properties. You want to make sure they look good. You all live in the neighborhood. You don't want a building that is vacant, that has broken windows, that is not maintained on the outside, that the grass isn't mowed. There are costs to maintaining the building, whether it's in use or not. So we are hoping that this group will look at that, look at those costs, and make a recommendation to us as far as these are the things you need to look at. We're trying to do that on our own, but certainly as residents and neighbors and members of various boards and commissions, you may think of something that we haven't thought of yet when it comes time to how are we going to keep these buildings in good shape until such time we do reuse them. And we've got to keep the neighborhood and the neighbors in mind when we do that. There are security concerns. There are, insurance concerns when the building's vacant. So maybe we look at a temporary use. Maybe there's a long-term use that this committee wants to recommend, but maybe there's a short-term temporary use that keeps something in there on a short-term basis. So those are the kinds of things we want you to look at. I think maybe unless anyone has any questions or wants to jump in, please. I don't want to only be the one talking, so feel free to jump in at any point. But our thought was that we would have Matt just explain to you what the buildings are all about that we're talking about.
Sure. I have something for us to pass down. Should be 4 copies. Should be 6 of these. So I took the liberty to go through the Auburn zoning bylaws and outline the permitted uses for these properties. Both of them are located in an RA zone, so that made it real easy to keep it on one page. So there were several permitted uses that are permitted via special permit, uses permitted via site plan approval, and then there are prohibited uses that are not, that would require a variance or possibly a rezone of the parcel. So these are the ones that you have a chance to go over. Hopefully these feed into your ideas for a best fit for these buildings. I also, if on the other page, I used the field cards from the assessor's database to put some information down, just some history, any building history, lower classroom add-ons, like Bancroft and modular additions, also the heating types, air conditioning, town sewer, and the appraised value of the buildings and the land for each. So there's a lot of data. I don't believe it's necessary today to go through these line by line, but this is more for us to have and to consider while making recommendations or coming up with ideas for proposed use for these properties. I mentioned the zoning is residential A, so there's not a lot of commercial or industrial proposals we can use on this without a rezone or a variance. Use variances, I can't speak on behalf of the Zoning Board of Appeals, but their success rate is never certain for a variance. So it may be in the town and this committee, this advisory board, best interest to try to keep with what's approved and what's regulated by our town boards, the planning board for site plan approval, and the special permits as required by the planning board or the zoning board, depending on the use.
Ed, I've got a question for you. And
Sure.
it's specific to the Julie Bancroft property, which is a pretty unique property and location, given it's on the edge of some commercial activity.
Right.
One of the, I'll say abutters, someone in the area anyways, was under the impression that there was commercial use permitted for part of the property. Is there any gray area on that?
For parcels that share different zones due to the lines drawn on the zoning map, they take the characteristics of the frontage for the property, and this one's frontage is on, is it Vinyl Street? Am I saying that right? So it takes the characteristics of the residential zone, despite some of it being zone commercial.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have any pictures or plot
I
plans?
do.
I have a question.
Sure.
Matt, what's the size of the acreage of the land in the two buildings?
The Julia Bancroft parcel, I believe, is 5.6 acres, if I have that correct. And the town, or the Central Street property, is a little different.
Do you want to explain?
Yeah,
a little bit?
it's, okay, so I have imagery that you'll see, just take a peek, pass it down, pass it back. I only have one copy of each. For the Central Street property, because the school, the building we're in now, and the Miriam Library, since the late 1800s, were sold as, well, they were sold to the people of Auburn, or the residents of Auburn, not so much the school or the government. The deeds don't show a plan with design regulations. They look very complicated. So they outline the dimensions of the parcels. Now, for tax purposes, since this is tax exempt land, tax purposes, they rolled this into one parcel without formality. So if, for some reason, we chose as a board to recommend this be sold to a private owner. There are in fact 5 parcels of land in this parcel, and it would become very complicated. Since those lines aren't outlined clearly, the acreage for the school can't be determined, but the acreage for the overall parcel is available through assessor's records.
And if we were to propose that the school be
Here's an example.
utilized for a non-public purpose, in other words, if you had to, and Paul, you know this from the planning board, if you needed to use it for another purpose, you would create an A&R lot. You would get a approval not required lot and separate it out and make its own parcel. So there is the opportunity to create a separate parcel. It's just right now,
It's not separated.
it's not separated, it's in this parcel, so it's showing a Central Street address, although we all know
Right.
it's on Church, so it can ultimately be separated. That could be an option to do. And then you could separate out some of the real estate that's behind it. If you're familiar with the parcel, in the back, there's a large playground area, and then there's a wooded area behind it. So that could be used to support parking if you needed parking. It may be used to support an extension of the building. There's a lot of things you could do with that. It's on a different level. What we'd like to do for the next meeting, we just wanted to explain things to you this meeting. At the next meeting, we'll make sure that every one of you have a copy of this. We're going to try to blow it up a little more. So you'll have copies and you'll be able to look at it. Maybe we'll give you each a couple so you can draw on them. We could get a large, if it helps, get a large copy of the plan. So you could go up with magic markers and do some configuration and just do some planning, so to speak, on boards. So when you talk about things, you can see what it might look like if you want to move things around.
For the folks who have seen the photo already, those lot lines are not perfect. That was, going through here, the chief assessor and I, Ms. Cosgrove, were able to determine the lot in yellow to the best we could. The other 4 are yet to be figured out.
We had the same problem when we did the high school. That
Yes.
memorial field was a mess. We
Yes.
had to straighten it out before we could continue.
Right.
Mary Ellen at one point was going to see if she could find out what other cities and towns had this problem come up before, where they were disposing of school buildings in what they did. And I don't know if she's done that or not,
I'll find out.
but ask her, because
What I can speak to a couple things on the process for disposition. In this particular case, the parcels are owned by the town of Auburn. They're under the care, custody, and control of the school department, as long as the school department is using them for school purposes. When the school department and school committee decides you no longer want this, and I just want to be clear, the only reason that hasn't happened is my understanding, the school committee is just waiting to make that declaration until they know the middle school is ready for kids to move into, they know that they're going to be moving the children around to the different facilities as they proposed, then they'll declare it. So the process, according to our town council, once you're ready to make that decision, the school committee would declare the parcels surplus. Because they're already owned by the town, they don't need to be transferred or assigned to the town for disposition. Under the charter, the town manager has the ability to put the parcels out for bid or reuse them internally. A town meeting vote is only required on leases that exceed 30 years. If it's a lease under 30 years, under Chapter 30B, you don't need to have a town meeting vote. In the city of Worcester, when I was there, I had worked on 4 school disposition parcels. And that was a little bit different case. The school committee had to declare it surplus, and they had to take a second vote to transfer the property to the city manager for the disposition of the property, and then the city council had to vote the final disposition. In this case, if there's a sale, so we just need the vote of the school committee to declare it surplus, we could put it out to bid. We, internally, the administration can make a recommendation for the final use of it, but any transfer of the property requires a Board of Selectmen vote to transfer a deed. So to transfer a property, the Board of Selectmen has to vote to transfer that deed. That falls within their purview. And there are some other town meeting votes that are needed for property disposition, but they're done every year. They're standard articles that are on the warrant, allowing the town to dispose of surplus property and tax-owned property. So that's basically the process. It's simpler than many communities.
Yeah.
Had the ownership of the land been in multiple uses, that would have been a little more complicated. This appears to be a much easier disposition process. So, and as Matt said, for ease in thinking, it is always easier to go with the current zoning, but don't let that stop you from thinking of another use. You know, it doesn't, we just can't guarantee that a ZBA, because they're an independent authority, obviously, your planning board would approve of a site plan or approve of a variance or a special permit, but certainly ask the questions. You know, if you think that there's something, some things are not allowed by special permit. So, you know, we could look at whatever use you come up with. Matt can check the zoning and see if it's allowed with approval of the ZBA. It's just that we don't want to, as Matt said, we want to be careful to not say that whatever we come up with doesn't mean for sure that we would have the support of a ZBA. They may see a concern in certain recommendations. You have a lot of experience
Yes.
in that.
Planning board is a lot easier now. ZBA is not yet. Well, actually, ZBA has gotten a lot better, too.
Yeah, I think, and just, there are certain things that they don't want to set a precedent of. So if they haven't done a certain variance or a special permit, they may be afraid or concerned, rightly so, about doing that and setting a precedent for something else. So that's the reason we're saying, if you can look at a current zoning use, that's good, but don't let it preclude you from thinking outside the box.
And I don't think there's any conservation difficulties with these two parcels. I know there's wetlands behind
Yes.
JB way down in the back, but I think they're owned by Bob Carlson.
Right, that's correct. I did a measure using the GIS system. The closest 100-foot line from there's a blue line on the plan here. I'll clarify that at our next meeting, but the 100-foot buffer doesn't encroach the field area. It's still within the wooded area in the back.
Could you just
Julie,
explain the,
Go ahead, Ken.
just the term special permit and site plan approval? Could you just explain those two?
Sure. Special permit is a process where it's allowed with a, let's see, a special permit can be a permit granted by either the ZBA or the planning board. The special permit is business-oriented. It doesn't go with the land like a variance would. The vote from the board has to be a 4 out of 5. Correct me if I'm wrong. 4 out of 5, or a unanimous 3-0 vote if other members are not present. Special permits can allow for a use, but they also trigger site plan approval. So site plan approval goes over the design, layout, landscaping, signage, frontage, dimensional, all of the little things to make sure that the site is in concordance with stormwater, all the design standards that are outlined in the bylaw.
And most of the time, we work with the abutters to make sure that the person that's looking for the special permit or the variance is working with the abutters, so
Correct.
that the abutters know what's going on, and usually the landscaping is to their advantage rather than the person that's building. We've had pretty good luck so far.
Correct, but both typically go hand in hand. Special permit triggers a site plan approval. Some site plan approvals may require more than one special permit depending on its use, or if it's in an aquifer district, for that matter, that would be a zoning board special permit. I don't believe either of these are, but I'll verify that. So, does that answer your question?
It does.
Okay.
Thank you.
Kevin?
Actually, I've got 2 questions. First is, can we assume, this board/committee, that if, I mean, the worst-kept secret in town is that these 2 parcels are going to be in play to some extent. If someone's interested in a parcel, they come to you with some interest on that, you're going to be in an awkward position of, you probably can't share that with this committee, yet at the same time, I'm sure you want to move forward if it's something that's legit. Is that, you're going to be stuck in the middle in that situation?
In certain cases, you know, I would tell you, recently I met with a developer who was looking for parcels in town for potential senior housing, over 55 housing. That particular developer, I said, when you get to that point, I'd like to be able to bring it both to this committee in case there's an opportunity for any of these buildings, as well as the Board of Selectmen. And this particular developer said, that's great. When I've done my initial homework and I'm ready, that's fine to do that. So I think what I can do is ask the developer. In some cases, the developer has said, I'm not ready to go public yet. This is really preliminary. This is all draft. And then I have to be careful to not give out information that 3 days later changes because they change their mind. So where I can, I'll suggest to them that we bring it to the committee and explain some of the interest.
Okay. My second question is, I'll say a little bit awkward in that there could be a municipal need or a need for one of our boards, maybe even the school department, to consider relocating. And I'm using just as an example. At what time does that get folded into our deliberations over this?
I think this group just needs to ask town administration, if we have, and school administration, if they have any need or desire for that, and we're happy to, I have been asked, actually, if that were to be an annex for town hall, would we have a use for it? And I would tell you we would, but I don't want that to be the guiding decision. And, being asked the question, I would tell you, yeah, we could use it. We don't have a lot of meeting space here. That's the first thing. If you look around, we have 2 primary rooms to have a meeting. We are constantly juggling boards and commissions and committees because we don't have enough places to put them. That's one concern. There aren't enough nights in the week to accommodate all the board and commission meetings that we have. We have departments that are busting at the seams. They've run out of file space. They're using space in the halls. Could we use it? Yes. But if the committee looks at this and says, you know what, there are some better uses for it, we're open to that too. But, and I think, I don't want to speak for the school department, but I would ask them the same question. We can prepare anything more formal, but just in general, I would say that if the group is willing to look at that, we'd be happy with that. We'd be happy with a lot of different options. And we can throw things out that, to you for consideration that are, you might not have thought of it. Maybe there's room, a place for an incubator space. Maybe there's a need to have a facility in town that houses a lot of not-for-profit organizations that service the community, and that on their own they can't afford to lease a space, but in a joint place together they potentially could. Just outside of the box, there are a lot of different options.
Actually, I have a question/request. It's probably for the next meeting, but I think what would probably at least be helpful to the committee would be to see the current, maybe not a cost estimate, but the current state of the buildings as we expect them to be upon the town, that they would be released back to the town, just in terms of how much it would cost to get them up to code, or what we would need to, what we would need to do for different uses, because I think that would influence.
Yeah, it's, thanks for saying that, Dorothy. A couple things that I want to point out as far as us coming and bringing you information. One of the ones I had thought that we should bring up would be Joe Fahey, who on the school department side, he knows those buildings inside and out.
Actually, he's
fantastic.
done an excellent job with the buildings. The building over here is in very good condition. The big reason that we decided that we wouldn't use it was because of handicapped accessibility and things like that, because it's on 3 different levels, so that you'd have to more or less separate parts of the building, like if you wanted to put, I don't know, the library on one end and town offices on the other and school department offices someplace else in the building. It's not as critical as if you're going to use the entire building for something, because to go from this end of the building to that end of the building, you have to go down and then go back up and in and things like that. That was one of the problems. The other building, the newer parts, not bad. The old parts, not in very good condition. Although he has brought it up from when I first looked at it about, 8-9 years ago, I said condemn it. And I know that he's brought it back quite a ways. He's done the bathrooms over in there and a lot of other new furnace in there and so forth. And it's not in bad condition. He's also been, while he's been spending money on kitchens and things, he's been buying equipment that can be taken out of those buildings we're closing and put into the new building, and saving us $1.5 tons of money, so that actually the middle school is not going to cost us anything in a tax increase when they do that, when they convert it to a elementary school, because of what the school department has done. They've done an excellent job. Mary Ellen is absolutely super.
So I think to Paul, and Paul, just so everyone knows, Paul is a member of the master plan committee
Yeah.
on the school department side that actually looked at all the different schools and looked at what the potential use was and made the recommendation to the school committee to actually close those two facilities. But I think it'll be great to have Joe come to a meeting.
Oh, absolutely.
And he can stand here and explain to you all the details about each building, you know, the construction, what some of the concerns may be. When it comes to what are you're talking about bringing it up to code for a different use. We could have the building inspector / commissioner, Caleb Moody, come to a meeting and talk about what might need to be done if it were to become apartments, what might to be, most of that, if it's going to be, if it was a senior housing, most of that would be done by a developer, but it is good to know what those costs might be. We also want to offer that if you want to have our assessor come at some point, Cindy Cosgrove, she could come and speak to you about, you know, what are the potential assessed valuations that these properties could generate if it became a private taxable use. We also have, our DPW director is also our town engineer, Bill Coyle, and he could come to a meeting and talk about curb cuts and streets and access and parking. He'd be a great resource for you. Also, police chief and fire chief. You know, if you have concerns or questions about fire, you know, apparatus, or police, or what kind of access do you need for the trucks if it's, you know, for fire protection? What do you need for police for certain uses? They'd be happy to come. So we want to be a resource. Maybe suggest that you look ahead and just give us a little bit of notice, and we'll see who can come and what order you'd like them to come in.
Great,
One of the things I did want to suggest is it might make sense at your next meeting to choose someone who's going to be kind of the leader of the group or the chair of the group. So I think it is helpful to have one person to at least kind of guide the discussion and be the one that gets back in touch with us, or ask someone else to get back in touch with us, so we can get from town administration any of the employees that you need for us to get. And just a reminder, the town clerk wants to have all the meetings posted. It's an advisory group, but we're still going to follow open meeting law and post all the meetings and provide minutes. So someone on the advisory group should be asked to provide notes or minutes, or we'll have to get those into the clerk just to keep track of everything. And the meetings, Chris Hugo from Auburn Community Television asked if we wanted it televised, and we thought it would be a good idea because a lot of people want to know what the discussion is and how we're approaching things. So we thought, you know, full transparency, let people see. They can't always come or can't always make it, but it's good for them to see what's going on. And maybe you'll get some residents that may reach out to the advisory group and give you some of their suggestions as well. One thought, you might want to hold a public meeting one night where you invite members of the public to come in and brainstorm and give you some of their ideas about what the buildings could be, and just collect all of the ideas and then sit as a group and go through some of the ideas and say this might work, this may not. There's a lot of different ways that you could approach it. We did want to ask the group how often you'd want to meet. We're hoping for recommendations back to me from the group in July, if that would, by the 1st of July, you know, so approximately 5.5 months, if that works. You know, it's fairly quick, but by July, probably August at the latest, we'd like to know if you're looking for the town to consider, and we want to go back to the Board of Selectmen and talk to them too, and make your recommendations to them as well as to me. We want to give them time to think about it and look at it. We want to go to the Finance Committee. You know, if there are any costs involved, any funding that we need to look at, we want to have time to do that. So I can't see that there's going to be a period of time that's really short from the students leaving till us reusing it. I think it's going to be a little bit of a spread. But the sooner we can get the recommendations, the quicker we can move forward and try to get some use in that building, especially for the neighborhood. So I don't know if it's up to all of you if you want to meet on a weekly basis, if you want to meet twice a month, if you want to meet once a month, and have members of the group come back, you know, have a brief assignment for members of the group and come back and get together, and it might make it go faster. You might want to have a couple of subcommittees, you know, maybe one group looking at looking at Mary D., one looking at Julia B., and then merge them together. We don't want to guide you in any particular direction, but we certainly want to give you guidance if you need it from us. And we will be happy to post the meetings. If you can let Matt know, we'll take care of the posting with the clerk's office, and we'll make sure that the minutes that are taken are filed appropriately. So we can do the administrative work on it as well, and if you need anything from Matt, again, from any of the town employees, just let us know, and we'll have it for you at the next meeting. You know, we'll probably start you on a file, you know, with the information you have tonight. We'll make sure we get you some maps that will be easy to read and draw on. We'll get a couple of large ones for you as well, and anything else you need as we move forward. I think the last thing I just wanted to mention is, you don't need to necessarily take a vote on this, but just give it some thought. If at the next meeting someone wants to step forward and, you know, lead the group discussion, that would be fine. If no one really is comfortable being a chair or being a leader of the group, I think that's fine too, as long as there's control over the meeting so you can get through your agendas. And that does remind me, when we post, we need an agenda. So when the meeting ends, and you should probably discuss what you're going to do at the next meeting. So at the end of, say, this meeting, we'll come up with a list of some agenda items, so when we post the meeting, we can post the agenda, and we'll know, the public will know what it is you're going to talk about. So at the next meeting, you may want to put discussion of building specifics, and that would be, hopefully Joe Fahey will be able to make it. And we can reach out to him, or Kathy, reach out, probably see him for the review. You may want to talk about, let's see, definitely a schedule. You want to, even today, talk about what does the group feel is an appropriate schedule for meeting. And we don't want to ask too much of you, and we don't want to set your schedule. I know for Matt's purposes, Wednesday nights work well because he's juggling planning board, ZBA.
Alternative energy.
Alternative energy, that's meeting. There are a lot of meetings that are going on at the same time, but.
Conservation on other Wednesdays.
Conservation, yeah, and Board of Selectmen on Mondays. So that's the only thing we were looking at, trying to figure out what night works. Wednesday nights, coming into budget season, Finance Committee meets on Wednesday nights.
As the school committee.
And school committee, so Wednesday nights may not work if it's a school committee, you're having Finance Committee, you might have to switch it to a night, and then you'd have to kind of just juggle a little bit. So I think that's something we want to kind of open up to the group, what nights do not work, and narrow it down from there.
Planning board meets on Tuesdays.
Which Tuesdays? The
Second and fourth.
Second and fourth.
second and fourth Tuesday.
But the school reuse committee also meets on Tuesdays.
On the same date?
On Mondays,
Sometimes
good for
I leave
anyone?
there.
Board of Selectmen
for
meets
7.
on the second and fourth Mondays.
So if we did the first and third?
I can't
Yeah,
think
Monday.
of anyone else, first and or third Mondays.
Yeah, Monday's fine.
Except for the Board of Selectmen.
I don't see this need to be meeting weekly, so
Neither
we
do I.
should
Neither do I.
work around
I think
that.
if we do it opposite
Absolutely.
of the
I don't
Board of
think I
Selectmen.
can swing it weekly, to be honest.
It's a lot.
Yeah, but bi-weekly, I mean, if everyone agrees, I think that would give us 10 additional meetings between now and July. That's a pretty substantial amount.
Monday?
If the group decides that Mondays work, say 6 o'clock, we can look ahead and try to pre-reserve this room. If this room doesn't work, because it's a little awkward to talk to, you can have it in the planning board room. It's a smaller desk. You won't feel like you're up on a pedestal.
We can use the TVs for visuals.
Yeah, the planning board room
yeah.
would work very well because of the electronics that we have in there for putting things up on the boards. So we can check. I know the Board of Health meets on Monday evenings at 4:30.
Okay.
I don't know which Monday evenings they're scheduled for. So we can take a look and then email all of you and give you some Mondays that are available and kind of do a doodle poll or something and see what comes back that works for everybody. It's an electronic poll. You just look on it and click, and then we'll know what works for everyone. And then once we get a couple down, we can pre-schedule them out ahead. Town Hall is open till 7 on Mondays, so in a way that works out well. If you were to meet, say, at 6 o'clock, it would work out well, because if we needed to have any of the employees in, they're here. They're able to come in easily. That's not don't let that stop you. If it's after hours, you know, we're always willing to come in after hours as well.
Now, could we get a list of some towns or cities that have already done this? I know Mary Ellen was going to start looking, and I don't know if she has.
I made a note to ask her about that tomorrow.
Okay, great. Because that's one of the things that we did discuss when we decided to take those two buildings offline.
I know in Worcester, again, only because I was there at the time we did it, we had 4 elementary school buildings, Lee Street, Dartmouth Street, Adams Street, and then
Cambridge
the
Street.
vocational school. Cambridge Street was one, too.
Yeah.
But we had all 3 at once get declared
North High, too.
surplus, all at once.
Oh, wow.
And Dartmouth and Adams Street both went to a housing developer that put in loft-style apartments/condos. I don't recall now if they were rental or ownership, but the Adams Street School was converted. It was beautiful, because I remember my mother was a head teacher of a Head Start program that was in the Adams Street School in the lower levels, and then the school was up above. So I had been there a lot, and when I ever went in and saw the conversion, it was beautiful.
Gorgeous.
The developer incorporated a lot of the blackboards into the ultimate use, you know, high ceilings. The blackboards were in someone's kitchen, and, you know, it was beautiful what they did, high-end appliances. It was beautiful. I think Lee Street School was actually purchased by WPI, and they ended up using it for a facility management building. They had moved their maintenance department, not necessarily a lot of vehicles, because they weren't looking for vehicle storage, but they actually had the need for storage of some equipment, they needed office space, so they used that building. That's my knowledge of another community.
Worcester Vogue also converted the housing.
Housing? Yeah. A lot of developers like the old, if you're looking at housing, they like the old, they like the brick, they like the floors, the high ceilings. There's sometimes a extra cost to doing that, so the building may not sell at as high a value as you're looking for, but again, I think the important part is to look at what's going to be good for the neighborhood. What's good for the town? What does the town need? What's good for the neighborhood? Is it going to have a negative impact on the neighborhood, and in which case you're not going to look that direction? Is it going to integrate well with the neighborhood and be an asset to the neighborhood? And that's the type of project you want to look at. So we'll check out Mondays. We'll see
Yeah.
what nights. I know we have the local emergency management committee meets on Monday nights, but I think they meet once a month, and I believe some of their meetings are down actually at the water department too, because again, we were running out of space. So, and we do always have the option of using the community room at the police department. If for any reason a certain Monday night works for everybody and we can't find an open room in here, we will look at the community room and see if that's easy parking, it's open all the time, as long as it's not being used. The police welcome it. They also have the smart boards and everything that we can put up there. It would be ideal to have it here, just because we have access to files that we may need to get. Matt may need to run and grab something out of a planning file or something. But we'll try to accommodate.
I don't know if people want to go through the two buildings.
Have a tour.
I mean, I've been through
That would be
them
nice.
many times. I don't, get an idea of what they look like.
That would be helpful. I mean, I'm familiar with the Mary D. building, but, I've only set foot into the gym at JB. I know nothing about that
Right.
site at all.
Yeah.
Kathy, is that something that could be done in the evenings? I know that would be kind of, you're going to have to juggle if there are school events going on, the students are there
Saturday.
during the day.
Right, well, we could do it either a Saturday or the evenings. Probably the evenings might be best, and maybe Mr. Fahey would be willing to kind of lead that tour. 'Cause I think he knows the
So maybe
buildings, like you
beginning-
said, inside and out. Yes, that'd be
Maybe
great.
start at one of the schools, spend one of the nights going to both of the schools, then coming back and just finishing up, so you're only here.
Yeah, because we used to do it on Saturdays, I know that. Like, when we were talking about doing the middle school over up here, we did that on Saturdays. And the other two, we also did on, of course, I think it was during summer vacation we started on those, so it was easy.
Well, let me check with Mr. Fahey to see
Yeah.
if he has a preference on the nights or weekends.
That's important to take a look at.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Well, just out of ease, maybe they could rig a room to have a meeting at one of the schools and just spend that night talking about a specific school and
That'd be great.
all the issues. It's great.
Can you find out if that's a really good idea?
Yeah, the problem with that is if you want to televise, you're going to have difficulty. Unless they, film it and then play it later
Right, they
on.
would just have to tape it. I think it's probably more important to make sure the committee and the advisory group gets into the school,
And
has the
sees it,
meeting and sees
yeah.
it, and so
Yeah.
we can work with Auburn Community Television to see if they could televise it on that particular night. As long as it's posted, members of the public are able to go in
Yeah.
anyway. So that, I guess my recommendation would be, probably want to do that soon, before you actually start having a lot of discussion. So Kathy, if you want to get back to us and let us know.
Back to you? Sure.
We can send out the email to everyone. What we can also do is create a distribution list of everyone's email addresses, so if any of you have information you want to share too, you'll have each other's.
That would be helpful. Yeah.
Would it make sense, Julie, do you think, if we had Joe Fahey, met us next time, let's just say, Mary D., we do the tour of Mary D., but then he also sits with us and tells us the condition of that building?
It's a great idea.
And then maybe do JB at another point, and he can do that building?
Yep. So have one on one night and one on the other night. And then, quite honestly, if you do that, we don't even have to worry about juggling what meetings might be here on those particular Monday nights.
Yeah.
For the next two meetings, you could almost choose now your tentative and then find out for sure if it would work with Joe. And then we don't have to worry about this. We just have to post it wherever it is. What dates are all of you collectively looking at for Kathy to talk to Joe and get into the schools? What would be the next date that you'd be interested in?
Probably the first Monday in February?
First Monday is February
2.
February 2nd.
Groundhog Day.
February
You
16th.
can see which school didn't have something going on that night, maybe they both don't, but
Right.
in case.
We can look at that, and then we can talk to Kathy, we'll coordinate it, and we'll send you an email. Does that work for everyone?
Yep.
So you'll know what works. And is 6 o'clock the time you want us to look at? Does that work for everyone? Too early?
Everybody like
Just
that?
right?
It's fine with me.
Okay.
Clock's fine.
The third Monday in February is President's Day.
We can go to second Monday if we have to.
That'd be
To the other school.
Oh, yes.
Select board meeting.
Select meeting.
Oh, is that, okay. Oh, we do it on a Wednesday night then or something.
Or I can, I'd rather be there for the whole thing, but I can, if we don't have executive session, we should be starting at 7. Right, Julie? I don't know if you know if there's any executive meetings coming up prior.
There might be.
Okay, then I'm gonna keep my mouth
Yep,
shut.
there might be.
Okay.
And, I can say, and certainly it doesn't matter, again, there's so many meetings going on, there's
Yeah.
always going to be a conflict.
Right.
On February 2nd, that's our second public hearing on the bylaw review, but there is one the prior week, so it's not a hearing continuation. So if anyone here wanted to go to that, it will also be held next Tuesday night, January 27th, is the first public hearing at the high school auditorium, and that's when we're going to be answering any questions anyone has on the proposed bylaws that we've been working on for 3 years now, so we're seeing the end in sight. And then the second public hearing is on February 2nd. The only problem,
Isn't it a Tuesday?
you know something? No, Monday, the second one is on a Monday with a snow date on a Tuesday.
Oh, okay,
We
okay.
chose a snow date, so the 27th of January is the first date, and the 29th is the snow date. And so far, we've been okay on the snow. And then February 2nd with the snow date of February 3rd. So I just throw that out there. It certainly doesn't mean that the meeting shouldn't or couldn't be held, but just in case anyone says, geez, I really wanted to see the bylaw public hearing, you would be able to make it the prior week.
And that's at 7 o'clock, right?
That's at 7:15.
7:15.
Yeah, there was something in the school auditorium until 7, so we pushed it out to 7:15. I know it's hard, you don't realize how hard it is to find a date. 13 people that can meet, or the majority that can meet, and then to actually find the meeting space, so.
Dorothy, when do you have select meetings?
We're every other Wednesday. This week we're on Thursday,
So what about the 17th? Was that what I was looking
Yeah,
at?
Tuesday, February 17th.
Tuesday, the day after President's Day, maybe to do the other school, maybe do JB or the opposite of what we can't get done?
It's in between planning board meetings, so there's no planning board meeting that day.
Is anyone on the school building committee? Because there is a school building committee meeting.
And Joe on that?
Yeah, I don't meet with the school building committee, we meet before then
Okay,
at 6,
so
Oh,
then,
okay.
6 to 7.
so you're looking at February 2nd and February 17th. Why don't we just work on those 2 dates now and see
Work on those
what
two.
works, and try to schedule one at one school, one at the other, and that takes care of, that's a big part of it, I think, is to get in,
Yes.
see the building, hear from Joe, and learn about property.
7th and 17th?
Connect with you.
Paul, do we have to move that to 7 PM for you
On,
on February 17th? If there's a planning
No.
board, you meet before?
no,
Planning board is on the 24th. and the
24th.
10th.
Oh, okay.
planning board, second Monday and
Okay.
fourth Monday.
So just for clarification, both those dates, 6 o'clock starts?
6 o'clock?
And then for clarification for us, so we can post it, if you don't mind, do you want to just run through what we think might be an agenda? Because it sounds like you know what you do. The agenda first would be the site visit / tour of the property.
Condition.
Condition
And
of
2 would be condition of property.
He's already given us pretty much of an understanding of what the use could be, and conform with the existing zoning
Yeah.
bylaws without,
But to have Joe come in and explain,
Yeah,
what's the
building.
construction, what's the masonry, what's the roof? Is there
Right.
20 years left on the roof? Is it
Right.
something that's gonna go now? And I know he's maintained everything, but to have to have this group understand what's been put into the facilities. There have been a lot of green energy updates that have been done to our schools and to our town buildings. We received a Green Community Grant that we've put a lot of money into upgrading some of the lighting, and so Joe, he's great, he knows what's been done to each of the buildings.
Julie, I have a question. Can we choose a chair this evening, or should we put it on the agenda for the next meeting?
I would put it on the agenda,
I'd
only
like
because
that
it's
on the
not
agenda,
on the
yeah.
agenda as
Yeah,
as something.
That's what I was thinking. Just wanted to
Yep,
make sure.
so maybe that's the first thing you want to do, would be vote for chair.
Well, we also have 2 members absent that will,
big thing
Yep.
is secretary,
Exactly.
And secretary.
Yeah, vote for chair
Minutes.
and secretary.
minutes.
Then the site, let me think, how's this gonna work? Give me 1 minute. All right, how's this? Site visit and tour first,
Yeah.
and then when you sit back down, have a vote for the chair, and then have Joe talk about the condition.
Yep.
And, let's see, somebody else mentioned something. Paul, to your point, if Mary Ellen has any additional information, the school superintendent,
Yeah.
on other communities and what they've
Right,
done.
and see if we want to visit them, or if we want to get information from them,
So what other communities
yeah.
have done, whether it comes in a report from Mary Ellen or just a list from Kathy, and we can also look and see if we can come up with any too.
Okay.
One of the big things would be what is necessary to bring them up to Americans with Disabilities Code, and have they relaxed the seismic requirements? I think they have. At one point, the seismic requirements were a killer, but I think they've relaxed them.
Well, what we can do, that would be our building inspector,
Yeah.
Caleb, so we can check with Caleb and see if he could go to one of those 2 meetings. And, because it's going to be the same information on what needs to be
Right.
done, so.
Julie, could we get a list of any town departments that are in need of extra space for that meeting too?
Sure.
Or that would be interested? And Matt, do you know if you change the use of those buildings, if it's going to trigger, they have to do the new IBC that went into effect in July, the new International Building Code? Like, is everything going to have to be brought up to that? The stretch
This will be
energy, the,
yeah, it's for Caleb to
Yeah.
determine, but as a rezone, yeah, if it's not going for a variance, and the parcel needs to be rezoned, requiring a town meeting vote, could take some time, but yes.
And for Stretch Energy, we are a green community, which means we adopted Stretch Energy, but still, it's still using the same code that the state hasn't updated beyond the point where we agreed to become a green community, so, but that it would be in place, yes, the Stretch Energy. Yeah. And I can just send out to the different town departments to see who may be in need of space. I mean, it's interesting, we've been parallel to this, and I think it will have a little bit to do with it. We've just done an analysis of all of the municipal buildings in town, all the facilities, DPW, police, fire, senior center, library, town hall, Marion Building, and Camp Gleason. And we've put together a list that we're going to be submitting to the board on Monday of all the facility improvements that we believe need to be done to keep these buildings functional and efficient and this list is 5 years out. And then we programmed out the improvements for each building by year, and which ones can be done in-house through our facility management department, and which ones would have to be outsourced, and the funding source for it. So we've kind of been going through this exercise for 9 months, so it shouldn't take too long for the departments to be able to come up with, an idea if they need additional space or not, because we've already been looking at that.
Julie, were there any reports that were generated by the school building committee back however many years that were done like on Mary D. and JB then, so we wouldn't have to reinvent the wheel as to the concerns you said, like the accessibility with multiple floors?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. I've returned to Kathy from the school department.
I am pretty sure there were
There
some.
were, we
so,
did that.
Yes. So I can try to see if we can find those.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, maybe if you have them, Kathy Jo could bring them. And bring
Definitely.
copies of them that night, because it speaks to what he'll be discussing anyway, which are the conditions of the building, the details of the building.
Because what we did is we looked at a number of different things in each of the buildings, and then we rated them on a scale. Did the building have handicapped accessibility? Like from 1 to 5, it either had none or it had handicapped accessibility. And that's the reason that we ended up with this building and the other building being closed, because they fell, far down on this scale of all the different items that we went through. And there was about 4 pages of items that we went through that Joe put together. So it was pretty comprehensive. We knew pretty much what was wrong with the buildings. And it was not maintenance, that's the thing. It was handicapped accessibility, heating, cooling, how much it costs to heat the building. Some of the buildings are on natural gas, some of them are on oil, and those were the different concerns that we had.
How dated are those reports?
Well, we just did them 2 years ago, a year and a half
All right,
ago.
so they're fairly recent.
Yeah.
Just if they were
Yeah.
considerably dated, I'd say we'd want to see them before we get the Joe Fahey real estate tour.
Yeah, well, we did those when,
Just make sure we're
once we
updated.
decided
Put a
to do
suit
the
on
middle
it for this thing, right? I mean, it's gonna get them televised, put a camera on.
I'm thinking Joe Fahey should be the chair.
Once,
And I think he'd go along with 2 country clubs. One here at the Mary D and one at the JB site.
once we had
Employee
finalized
exercise
the middle
room.
school,
Keep our
that's when we
employees healthy.
decided what to do with the other
Okay.
buildings.
Okay, good, that's good.
I just wonder, are there chairs that are not small chairs for everyone to sit in?
We'll make sure there are.
So you'll be sitting at...
That's true, at Mary D.
I don't think you can fit in one of those.
Yeah.
So what we can do is we can
We
put
have
together
one.
an agenda based on the things that you just talked about. We'll verify the times, we'll work together with Kathy, and then we'll email it out to all of you. The meeting on February 2nd would have to be posted by the,
48 hours in advance.
That'd have to be done
or so a week, so that's next Thursday.
Yeah.
before noon tomorrow.
No, it's not for another week, February 2nd.
It
It
needs
would
to-
be
it needs
next, it's 48 hours.
We're not advertising.
Right,
We're
it's not an
posting.
advertising hearing.
Right,
Yeah,
okay.
it's just a posting for a meeting. So next Thursday, we need to confirm it, but we'll try to get the information to you tomorrow, so at least you can get on your calendar, and then we'll worry about getting the posting out there. Post on 29th. And If anyone thinks of anything else that you want us to bring, I mean, we may not even be able to get it for the next meeting, because it's pretty quick, but if it's something basic, we can certainly get it for you for the next meeting, and then we'll make sure it gets on the agenda for the following meeting. So, anyone else?
I just want to note that if we are doing these site visit inside the school, there are likely reasonable concerns outside the school. If it's incredibly inclement weather, I don't recommend we assess that, but I would, yeah, it will be dark, but I do think those need to be seen at some point. So
Yeah, at some point
if
you'll wanna
we're
see
not
them
doing
during the
it
day.
during the site visit, if you do have your time, I know we're all busy, but it might be good to examine the exterior of these facilities also.
Yeah, and Joe can
It's a good idea.
explain any issues that are on the outside, and on your own time, if you want, just take a ride through during the day, you know, on a weekend when there are no children there.
Perfect.
Don't
Well,
go at
I-
drop-off time.
No, I know. I know. I want to thank you all for your interest, for your commitment, for the time. I know it's going to be a busy committee, but I think we're going to end up with a great report. I think we're going to be excellent. Again, anything we can do to help you, that's what we're here to do. So, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Julie.